And you know, it wasn't a complicated character that we had to play. I mean, it was, you know, in film, well, in the theater too, this is true for film and theater, the great directors, the biggest part of choosing is casting well.
Yeah.
If you cast well, 85 to 90% of your job is over as a director. Truly, that's the truth. So that's what I think he did with Gary and I. There wasn't a lot we had to do.
I asked him once how I got the job, and he said, I looked at 50 hours on you. He said he looked at 50 hours of film on you to make a decision. I never knew anything about it. He did it all on his own and then called my agency. I wasn't submitted for anything. We never auditioned or anything.
Same with me.
Well, first of all, I just want to say it's an enormous privilege to have both of you here. Two guys who have been, I guess, part of film history, and I don't think that's an understatement, so just thanks for coming down here, first of all. I'm, I guess, an aspiring filmmaker. It's a pretty strong word to use at the moment, but and I'm always looking for ways to just improve myself as a filmmaker and director. So I guess as actors, I just want to...
May I give you one word of advice at this very second?
There we go.
Don't listen to anybody. And read. That's the game. The brighter you are, the better choices you will make, because films are bits and pieces. It's not as emotional as everybody thinks. It's so much to think about. And if you love 2001, and Keir made it very clear that Kubrick was absolutely on top of everything there was. When we first arrived and we had those jumpsuits, he said to the lady, take them home and wash them 6 times so they look like they live in them. You have to understand, you have to read. I say that to every young person, or, you know, I've been a reader all my life. Keir reads. Did your family own a bookstore or something? Yeah. And so the point that I'm trying to make is that, listen, I'm a cowboy kind of guy. I was in the rodeo as a kid. I'm a villain. But I read from the time I was 5 years old. And in the acting profession, you know, everybody says actors are idiots and not that bright, and, you know, they're children, and Hitchcock said that. Nonsense. You go on a job, and trust me, if you can go through all the grips, all the photographs, all the directors, everybody, if you want some interesting conversation, go to the actor hutch. That's where it's happening. And Stanley Kubrick liked, I mean, one day I told friends of mine that Stanley Kubrick was an ardent football fan. They go, what? Stanley Kubrick liked football? I played at UCLA. Stanley Kubrick had football films sent to London, and he had 2 35mm projectors. And Eddie, his chauffeur, would play them. And because I knew the game, I'd been a quarterback years when I was younger, and I would sit and watch films with Stanley Kubrick, and he would stop the film and ask me questions. Because football is chess and violence. No, American football, you all laugh about it, you go in the huddle, it's not your rugby. But boy, when they're in the huddle, there's all kinds of brain trust and computers going on. It's a very heady game. It's violent as hell. And that's why he liked it so much. And I never worked for anyone in my life that was more on top of everything. Camera aperture, technology. I mean, he had lenses made for the movie. So, read. That's the best thing you can do.
Okay, I'll read more and watch Gridiron. The question I was going to ask, and that was all very helpful, it might relate to this, is that you've worked with a lot of directors. What do you think separated Kubrick from other directors?
Intelligence. Huh?
In working with him, like on a scene, perhaps?
What do you think?
I'm trying to think. It was, he created, for me, a very safe atmosphere. And I never felt that even though I had been in awe of him before I began working, he got me over that real quickly. And he didn't over-direct. He trusted, as I said earlier, he trusted his casting and he trusted his script. And he would make suggestions, but he didn't do a lot of directing, did he?
None. I swear to God. None. Absolutely none. And that kind of blows young guys' minds. You know? They
the
think
worst
when they
director.
become directors, they're going to be able to see, now look, you know, your mother did this and your dog just died. Nonsense. It's nonsense. I'm sorry.
Just a general question. Back in the 1960s, what do you think 2001 was going to be like?
Looking ahead,
What do you
at that point, what do we think 2001 would really be like?
Yeah.
Is that the idea?
I thought we'd be farther along.
In
I mean, we have a space station, and you know. But I mean, I thought the world was heading in. I mean, I thought the program was moving in a wonderful direction, and the whole attitude, and then everything got derailed.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we've achieved some things that, I mean, we have, you know, the computers are, although I don't think we have a thinking computer the way Hal is portrayed. I haven't reached that point. But in terms of the space station, all the stuff that we see in 2001, I thought that we would have a lot. I thought we'd see a lot of that already. We haven't. Right?
Thanks.
I saw the movie as a 12-year-old back in '77, and it blew my mind, as it probably did everyone here, and I hate to give the ending away a little bit, but I would really love to know what it was like to walk on that Edwardian set, because that was one of the creepiest twists I've ever seen in a film.
It was amazing. Well, part of the experience was I experienced the longest makeup as the oldest version of my character. That took 12 hours.
I think you hold the world's record for the longest person ever in makeup. You did
Yeah.
12 hours.
But it was. I mean, I can't tell. I never did ask Stanley specifically, how come it looks like a Louis XVI room, you know? But I'll tell you, here's my interpretation of what it was that the passing intelligence that saw the ape men down there and planted a cosmic alarm clock on the moon, they knew that they wanted to know about those beings if they became intelligent enough to find it and set it off. So if they were that far in advance, million years advanced of the human being, they had the ability to read a mind like a tape recorder. So my character may have visited the Louvre Museum and walked through you know how we take an animal in the zoo, we try to make it feel like it's at home, we build an artificial cave for a polar bear, or you know, put some trees up for a koala bear, or whatever it is, we try to make it think it's in the wild. Of course, it's not in the wild. Well, they were so, the passing intelligence were so far in advance, all they had to do was, they kind of read a mind, and probably one day my character walked through a museum, through a Louis XVI room in a museum. But what they saw was habitat. So they artificial, because that room to me was all inside my head while I was being transformed in some way. So I don't know if that helps.
I'd like to just add a little comment to that Kubrick, as a visual master, he is a movie maker. And we're talking about that set, aren't we? So it's a fantastic direction, fantastic choice. It's all about choices, being a director. And it was a great choice. I mean, he might have just one day said, wow, that's a great look. You know, I mean, it's not always, the critics and people who don't really make movies always come up with these magnificent allegories in the post-mortem of a film. you know, this meant that, and that had to mean that, and they're walking down the street after they just come out of a movie, boy, when he said that, and she did that, she did that. It's nonsense most of the time. And in 2001, there's so much attitude, so much dialogue, because of the controversial, not necessarily controversial, but because of the incredible imagination it took to make it.
Thank you.
Gary, I was very pleased to hear you mention aspect ratios and technology. For both of you, during production, were you aware that you were filming in 470mm and Cinerama release?
I definitely was.
Absolutely.
Were there any complications in filming for the deep focus and those sorts of things?
No, I don't. My attitude is that, you know, it was the most natural choice. The proper format, you know, it couldn't be the Academy or normal panorama. It had to be the best.
But it didn't, that alone, that aspect didn't present for me as an actor any, and I mean, filmmaking is filmmaking. It didn't affect, there was nothing I had to adjust to because it was a 70mm camera.
We did have, the one thing you have to do as an actor when you're on a big format like that, and if there are any young actors here, I'd like to just kind of warn you that if you learn something technically about film, you'll do yourself a great service, because if you have a clever director who really knows his stuff, and you have some out here in Australia, because I've seen some of your directors, and a smart actor will, you know, say to the director, go to the cameraman. He doesn't have to ask the director. He's very quietly, I do anyway, I think. And I say, what do we have on here? And he'll say 120, 85, 50mm lens. And you have to say, okay, in the 50mm lens, my head will be this big, you know, on this aspect ratio, my head will be this big. But if it's a 120 lens, here's the aspect ratio, and my head will be that big. And so you have to learn to not just go with your emotions, but to also bring some technological sort of architectural concept to your acting and say, okay, you know, if I only do that, what'll it mean? You know, you can't just go with how you feel, because you might be in a tight lens and your head's going all over the screen and you're not be effective.
In filmmaking, the closer the camera is, the more of a close-up it is, the old adage, less is more.
Exactly.
And sometimes you don't do anything but think it. And if anybody's interested for me, Michael Caine it wasn't a film, it was it was for video. You can probably get it on DVD, but it was film acting. The whole thing is how to act for film. It's quite, have you ever seen it?
No.
It's brilliant. It is quite, anybody here seen that? You have, don't you think it's terrific?
It's on YouTube. You can see it on YouTube.
It's extraordinary. If anybody's interested in film acting, get his lesson on film acting, which is on a DVD or, that was a tape, VHS at that time, but I'm sure it's been re-released on DVD.
Our friend here says it's on YouTube, so there.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Or you can call Bill Shatner, he'll tell you about everything.
Yeah, last one, sorry, just make it quick. Just in terms of your performance, Keir, how did you differ with your relationship with Hal compared to Gary? Like, how did your performance differ? What nuance did you put into it?
Well, the relationship was completely different. Gary and our characters have been trained together. We were very used to each other, and there wasn't